Hello everybody and welcome back. A little bit of a different intro there because obviously I'm a little bit excited. So you know what this is, and this is the latest update for the Quelimon mod. Almost lost my breath there just as I had to say it. So for those of you who haven't been following, you know that the Quelimon mod is a mod where I add an area which is dedicated to some forest trolls and the High Elf remnant. This isn't an entirely large race, this is just for the few left High Elves who actually managed to carve out a little nook for themselves on Azeroth. So this is this is actually, if you look at the valley area, between this mountain range and this mountain range. On the other side is Arathi Highlands, and behind this large mountain, behind the tree, is the hinterlands. So it's nestled in between the hinterlands and Arathi Highlands. So it's the highlands, the entire zone I am calling the Ancient Wilds. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and remove this and show you what these areas are called for those who have never seen the mod again. So this is Queldrassil. Queldrassil is rumored to be the great grandmother or grandfather, if you will, or progenitor of these golden trees. This particular area is a very old area that the initial Highborn, when they arrived in Lordaeron, and before they had finally established Silvermoon, they had found this area and nestled themselves here, but they were, as they were throughout their entire history, sort of hassled by the forest trolls, and eventually it fell to them. So the story of how you get this land back is the story of taking it back from the forest trolls. But yeah, so that's the story of Queldrassil. It's sort of the main tree which has allowed them to then sprout these countless others that are within their forest. This is Silverwing Manor, of course, and this has a series of micro-environments. So you have a bit of a cemetery here, you have some monuments on this side, and in the back is where you have sort of the more interesting things. You have, of course, a smoking area with a harp underneath this tree. You have some eating areas here in the back. You have some cooking areas. Spared no expense for those who are interested in RP for their servers. And here in the back we have Shrine of the Light, because obviously the High Elves must have some sort of Shrine of the Light, even though they're not necessarily all that dedicated. They're also not against it, and there were quite a few High Elves who were priests during the Third War. So it just made sense. And then again, because when I was on an RP server, I RP'd a High Elf priest, so there's obviously got to be a little bit of me in the map as well. So you've got a lot more. You have this, of course, which is new, so the emblem on the starting area. I realized we didn't have one. Well, it sounds like my phone. Anyways, we'll ignore that. There's some additional foliage. There's some couple of new models in the game. I've tried to make them texture-wise as similar as some of the existing game ones, so they won't stand out too much. What I mean by that is that I'm using the same resolution as the resolution that was used for the Burning Crusade. That's just how it's going to be. So as we move into Brightwood Grove, there's some elements here. Of course, you're seeing these trees. Now, what's different about the Bright Grove trees is, and it'll eventually be an object of a quest, with sort of like the lore that I'm writing for the area, they produce these crystals, or this crystallized sap, if you want, which is a sort of fruit from these modified trees. And these fruits, these crystals, can be collected out of these trees and used to alleviate or sustain some of the High Elves as being magically dependent creatures. This was the way they could obtain some mana. Here we're going to go, and this is Runestone Shaldor. Of course, we have the new foliage things around it, and it actually looks very, very good. I really like how the really golden rune on this runestone just makes the foliage shine. So back on the trees and back on that. The crystals are obviously filled with mana or magic, which is useful to sustain yourself, or can be used in many different ways. It can be worn as a necklace, it can be ground up, and it can be used to infuse other things. And that's pretty much what it is. I'm going to shut up right now because I actually want to show you the main change that has occurred. And of course, the main change, let's not bury the lead, are those new glorious towers. So the towers had always been part of the plan of how this would look eventually. The figuring out how to make them was an entirely different situation altogether. I didn't want to bury the lead, and although I'll finish telling you the story about the mana fruit, but I just wanted to give you a good glimpse at the tower elements, and at some of the new foliage and some of the floating structures as well, which adds to the tie-in of, because what somebody else had said, it's like, you know, it's very much in ruin, but it doesn't quite, you know, remind me of High Elves with these towers and the floating elements, and it's definitely very present now of it being an ancient abandoned not first city, but some of the first settlements on this side of the world. Here, of course, we've got main statue. Main statue, I think I'll be updating so that it actually matches better. So that will be good. Here we have the two main towers. Anyways, let me get back on telling you about the tree and their fruit. And you'll see more signs of it later on. So here, for example, you can see some like crystals collected at the bottom of this tree, and you can see some crystals, you know, just dangling about from some other trees as well, growing as fruit. Part of the quest for retaking this land also comes at the cost of having your allies help you and having people tend to your forests and tend to the cleansing of your land. And at some point, this is still being written and thought of, but we know that the druids will be called in, and some druids will be in opposition to helping the High Elves. Others will be a little bit more open to it. Here we have a Highborn stand-in, and we have Fandrel Staghelm as a stand-in as well, but that won't be for last. So eventually what happens is one druid will take a High Elf pupil, and the High Elf pupil will be in charge of maintaining what they jointly did, which was creating a moonwell. The moonwell, of course, is a blessed night elf thing, but it also contains great magical properties. And in the past, it used to be in the lore that High Elves could be satiated or sustained even just by being in the presence or in nearby presence of a moonwell. So at first that became the general idea, and then I thought that obviously the defiling of a moonwell or using it for experiments or everything else would be kind of a temptation. So as part of the quest, I think that what is going on here is a process by which they promise to keep the moonwell pristine and use it as a source to feed their trees, which are producing the crystals. So the crystals are essentially a byproduct of these magical trees being fed and modified with Moonwell water, which results in something that the High Elves can actually use to experiment on, that they can actually use to sustain themselves, that they can treat as a resource as opposed to defiling something which the Kalderae have agreed to help them sustain so long as they treat it with the same level of respect. And that's part of sort of like the culture shift that's happening here as the High Elves want to distance themselves away from their Cinderai brethren, is that they actually want to be a bit more careful and respectful of different things. So not much has changed. Well, obviously, when you come into the court, some of the first things that you'll see are, of course, the actual new foliage, which is behind the banners, which is behind the throne, which in of itself is impressive. Impressive just because it looks really nice. Right, so let's just move down this side as well, and we'll take a look at some of the towers. There's some other floating elements over there. We'll come here. We'll take a look at the back. We haven't taken a look at the back yet. So some of the things that happened in the back is, of course, we have a new path that actually leads to the flight path. It's sort of odd before that the flight path was in an area that was completely pathless, but I also didn't want to create a path because I kind of like this rolling hill area. So long as I think it was indicated, it was fine. So some of the changes here, we now have an Alliance Dragonhawk NPC in the back. The skins are working. We've got a little bit of additional foliage there. So that's looking very, very good. And we have the path back here as well, being something new. Other changes to the lake, some minor changes. There are some changes in some of the trees. The back area here has actually been reworked, reshaded. It's actually looking very, very good. We're gonna go through here, through this little hill, come back to the road, and we now have new roads. This and that area there is new. Of course, there, you know, there's a captain on that other end, and there's a path over here, so that's working pretty well on that end. Right, here we have, of course, I guess some of the trolls have already been killed. There's a bit of fighting going on between the Imani warrior there and the Quelimon ranger, so she should be fine. When that fighting the forest trolls to them should come now as sort of like second nature, if you want it. So let's go. What else did I want to show you? I probably wanted to show you... yes, I know, but I'll show you there somewhere else right now. I'll show you on the other side as well. There's been some other little nooks and crannies that I don't want to show you just yet, also because I think it'll be a good surprise. For those of you who hadn't seen before, look, here is Quel'Darai Steed as I sort of imagine it and designed it. And you've seen the video on the channel. Here it is, and it's a thing of beauty, actually. I enjoy it quite a bit. I'm even thinking about making some other versions of the steed available as well. So what else should I tell you? Well, yeah, there's a bit more, you know, there's details, things like that. I think what I should tell you is that there are plenty of changes to be had down this area, but I'm going to do that for a second video. So make sure that you tune in next week while we'll be taking a look at the south part of the mod with the updated updates, plenty of updates, new cave. Some more details across the land. The path work has been pretty much redone. It's looking very, very good. Not to pat my own back. It's one of those areas now that I've been working on for such a long time, that it's getting there. It's getting to that level where, you know, it's I don't want to say it's on par with what Blizzard has done, because I know the quality of work that Blizzard is doing nowadays, but it's not bad. It's better than some other sort of like poorly designed areas that I've seen, and I'm still learning. I'm still like listening to all of you of that feedback. So hopefully we'll keep on growing in a great direction. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. Make sure to tune in next week for more of this content, and until then, everybody, take it easy. Bye bye.